Hey, Faith Community. I am Jason Wick. Today we are continuing our walk through the New Testament together, and today we are in Mark chapter 4. Mark chapter 4 is just an encouragement, especially to me, just right now, sort of the climate that we're in, politically, religiously, here in my home state of California, things that are going on. This is just a super encouraging reminder that the kingdom of God is unstoppable. It cannot be stopped. It won't be stopped. You can try to suppress it however you want, but it's not going to stop. So today in Mark chapter 4, we're gonna zero in actually on verses 26 through 34 of Mark 34, and I want to start just at the beginning. It says, "And he said," this is Jesus talking, "the kingdom of God is as if a man should scatter seed on the ground. He sleeps and rests night and day, and the seed sprouts and grows. He knows not how. The earth produces by itself first the blade, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. But when the grain is ripe, at once he puts in the sickle, because the harvest has come." And so it's just an amazing reminder, right? Jesus is using parables to explain the secret things of the kingdom of God, right? So that's the purpose behind the parables, sort of explain things to the disciples and people who are with the disciples, some of these secret things. And so if you weren't a follower of Christ, if you didn't put your faith and trust in him, like these things don't quite make sense. But for Jesus and the disciples and those that are following, like they began to put the pieces together of what the kingdom of God was like, and it's sort of unfathomable to them at this moment. They have expectations, that they have developed over the course of their lives, and now Jesus comes in and just shatters those expectations, says actually in many ways it's the complete opposite of what you thought. And so they're expecting a revolution. They're expecting to turn the world upside down and completely, radically change things, which Jesus will eventually do, but not in the way that they're expecting. And one of the things that we learned from this passage here today is that big power comes from small beginnings, right? Just even think of the life of Christ, right? It's God incarnate, but born of a virgin, right? Born as an infant, born as a small child, and yet this unfathomable power that he has, and yet such a small beginning here on earth. And so a couple things I want to talk about. One is the kingdom is unfathomable because it runs counter to our wisdom. And Jesus uses the parable, uses stories to sort of explain how this works together. So he says, that the scatterer of the seed, he sleeps and rises night and day, and the seed sprouts and grows. He knows not how. And so the person's out there, he's sowing the seeds, he's scattering the seeds, he's laying them all out there, and then he goes away, and then the seeds start growing, right? So he does his part, and it's the earth that produces the seeds. I think a lot of times we think it depends on us, right? So I think Jesus' disciples at this time, they're thinking of how the revolution is going to come, and we see some of the disciples like Peter especially, they probably thought it's going to come through the sword, and there's going to be an uprising, it's going to be violence, and we're going to overthrow the establishment, and we're going to change things, we're going to radicalize things, and it's going to happen. Jesus says, no, that's not the way it works. We're going to turn things upside down, but in a much different way. And I think we get caught in the same trap of thinking that if the think back to when you're in high school, right? And maybe you're a believer in high school, and you're trying to share the gospel, and you want to win your campus over for Christ. And so in your mind, as you're sort of planning along, like, how am I going to bring the gospel to my high school? How am I going to change this class? How am I going to bring people to Jesus? And you say, okay, who should I start with? Well, I should probably start with like the quarterback or the cheerleaders, or I should start with the popular students, the students that everyone looks to, the class president, the prom king and queen. That's the people I should be going towards. But Jesus' ministry isn't saying, don't target those people, but it's saying that's not how I'm going to build my kingdom, right? So it's not going to fit your idea of what is going to work and what is going to not work. And so the tone of Jesus' ministry is to reach those who are on the outskirts. And so we could look around where we're at and we can say, oh, things are never going to change here because, this leader is not a believer. This leader is against Christianity. This leader hates God. This leader, and we sort of look around and we just look at us as a bunch of ragtag Christians and well, what can we do? Whereas we look around our church and we see those that otherwise would be on the outskirts of society, and we say, okay, what do we have that's going to be able to change the direction of the city, the county? What's going to change the direction of the state that we're living in? And Jesus said, look, it's not about what you think is going to work. It's about my power. The kingdom is unstoppable and it's unfathomable, and it grows in spite of us. So it doesn't matter what I do, right? What matters is the power of the gospel. Mark 4:28 says, the earth produces by itself first the blade, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear, right? So the seed is scattered, it grows. We learned earlier in Mark chapter 4, verses 1 through 9, that it matters where the seed lands, but that the sower is out there and he's sowing it, but it's the gospel that brings the power. Romans 1:16 says, for I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. Ephesians 3:7 says, of this gospel I was made a minister according to the gift of God's grace, which was given to me by the working of his power. 1 Thessalonians 1:5, our gospel came to you not only by word, but also in power. Colossians 1:5 through 6, the gospel has come to you as indeed in the whole world it is bearing fruit and increasing. It's the gospel that has the power. It's not about us. It's not about getting the quarterback. It's not about getting the cheerleader or the prom king and queen. It's about the power of the gospel, right? So as we look around where we're living, as we look around our state and our city, and we look around and say, okay, there's not the people in power aren't followers of Christ, but their power doesn't matter. It's the power of the gospel. And Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3:6, I planted, Apollos water, but God is the one who gave the growth. And there's this incredible book that I'm using for today's devotional. It's called The Storytelling God by Jared Wilson. And in it, he's writing about his home in New England and where he was pastor, and where he's trying to lead people, and the climate of New England was very cold towards Christianity, and so he talks about his hometown, and I sort of rewrote it for California. And so let me just read this to you. It says, Christians scattered throughout California are trudging along while fighting off discouragement and praying for a fresh move of God in our region. I don't know what the Spirit is doing in California. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what he's doing. Sometimes I look around and groan inwardly. The brokenness is palpable. There is a dark cloud hanging over the state, even on sunny days. Unemployment and poverty are increasing problems, and therefore so are drugs and other crimes. The young people in California especially seem to share a helplessness, a stuckness. The temptation to throw in the towel and give over to hopelessness is huge. All I know is, according to the parables of the kingdom, it's not my job or anyone else's in the church's job to make stuff happen. It's our job to scatter the seed, to work hard at sowing the seed, and then to pray and love and laugh and rest while the Spirit does his job in the gospel. The grain will grow ripe in God's timing. Galatians 6:9 says, and let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. The grain is not ripe yet, but it will be. The kingdom is unstoppable. No rocky soil of California will be hard enough to stop it. No sheep from the Good Shepherd will be too lost to be found by him. The kingdom of God runs counter to our wisdom and works in spite of us. And I was reading that. I was just like, that's exactly how I should be feeling. Right? As I look around and I see things, and we had an election, and we have people talking, and there's sort of this turmoil and this just discontentment that is stirring in my heart. It's like, okay, it's not me. It's not about my power. It's not about me. It's about the gospel. It's about the power of the gospel. And since I trust and know that the gospel is powerful, that God is powerful, I'm not going to throw in the towel. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to say it's too far gone. Everything's done. I'm done with this. No, like I'm gonna do my part and spread seed. And then Jesus continues. And he says, he's trying to compare the kingdom of God to something else. And he says, with what can we compare the kingdom of God? Or what parable shall we use for it? It is like a grain of mustard seed, which when sown on the ground is the smallest of all seeds on earth. And that's what Jesus says we're like, right? It's not about me. It's not about my power, right? It's about God, right? So every other religion and worldview sort of has this self-motivational or this righteous sort of me-centered movement to it of I can do it. Christianity comes in and Jesus comes in and says, actually, you can't do it, right? It's not about you. You're like a mustard seed, right? Or you're like the guy that throws the seeds out, and it's not about your power at all. It's about God and his power and the power of the gospel. And so California, don't grow weary. Don't give up. Don't throw in the towel. The days may seem dark. The future may appear bleak, but let's not use our wisdom. Let's not use our thoughts, but instead let's trust in the power of God. Let's trust in his wisdom that said if we do not give up, we will reap in due season. Keep praying. Keep sowing those seeds. God bless.